order cards are becoming more powerful with each and every single passing day. And this week, that's been more true than ever, as we saw some amazing new orders and order support.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another Cardfight update, as today we're gonna do once again the weekly roundup where we take a look at all the cards that have been revealed for the Card of the Day reveals. And this week has been a busy one for set 3 because we got 50 new cards for the upcoming set, and that means we have 3 new cards per nation to talk about. And interesting enough, we got an amazing new order for Dragon Empire, Cater Sanctuary and Dark States, and order support for Stoichia as well as Brandgate. So let's take a look at these cards and see what these new nations bring to the table, as we have a lot of interesting things to talk about. And we're going to start off with a new grade 1, which surprisingly is going to be very good Eugene support, as we got Twin Strike of Duststorm Orlando. And Orlando has the effect Act from Soul. If your opponent's rearguard was retired this turn, cost counter +1 and call this card to the rearguard circle. So basically, this already tells us that it's Eugene support because this gives us more pluses onto the board. Yes, you want to use your soul for other skills, but I think this can actually be better than just using your soul for random top X card calling, as you know what you're going to get. And at the same time, this does synergize with the right line because we have the grade 2 that puts a card from the drop into the soul. So if we can discard this early game, then we can immediately put this grade 1 into the soul and then set up for its own effect. But on top of that, this grade 1 also has the effect auto rearguard circle. When your grade 3 or greater Vanguard attacks, cost, put this unit into your soul, choose one of your Vanguards, and it gets power +5 until the end of turn. So this makes Eugene just a better attacker. This can also combo very nicely with Tri-Bash because you can attack with the entire column, and then once you attack with your Vanguard, you can put the grade 1 into the soul to get 5k power, and then put the Tri-Bash into the soul to get an extra critical, which also clears your board against another potential Eugene deck if the mirror match actually going to be a thing. But that said, it also fuels into his own act ability because next turn he's back into your soul, so you can use this effect again to call him out. And at the same time, if you don't really have the Tri-Bash play, you can also use this as a target for Eugene to rest him, and then during the battle phase, you can just suck him in his soul and still get some value out of it, even though he couldn't actually boost. So overall, a very flexible card, and I think it's going to be a very good grade 1 for Eugene to work with. Now, another card that might be Eugene support, but can work in general sense, but it's also not all too great, is the grade 3 Piercing Bullet of Duststorm Maynard. And Maynard has the ability auto. When units placed on the Vanguard circle or rearguard circle, cost counter +2, choose one of your opponent's rearguards and retire all of your opponent's rearguards in the same column as that unit. So overall, on value wise, I think this is actually really good because it's 2 potential retires for 2 counterblasts. And most retire effects, besides Eugene himself, cost more than 1 counterblast per retire, which honestly makes this a very solid card. But the problem is that you immediately need to waste 2 counterblasts, so that there might be scenarios where you don't have the 2 counterblasts. And on top of that, you also want to make sure that you only call this once your opponent has a full column, because otherwise it's just going to be very wasteful because you don't want to waste 2 counterblasts for just 1 retire. So it might be useful, but it's very specific in usage. So we have to wait and see if it's actually going to see some use. But a card that's actually going to be pretty insane and is probably going to help Eugene to really make a comeback, or should I say finally make a splash, is this grade 3 normal order Capture Festival. And its ability is choose one of your Vanguards, and until the end of turn it gets auto on Vanguard circle. When your opponent's rearguard is retired during your main phase, you draw a card. Yeah, that's actually really good, because whenever you use this, you're always going to use it as a cycle. Because Eugene can rest 2 cards and just pop something in the main phase, and you can immediately draw a card. So this will never minus you in value. Whenever you use it, you're going to get the card advantage back. Now that said, every single subsequent retire after that is going to plus you. So if you have any of the on-place effects that retire something, or you have the grade 2 Brachio that rests itself to also pop something, or you have another card that can retire itself to pop something else on your opponent's side of the field, suddenly all those effects now are starting to plus you like crazy. So I can definitely see this making a big change in Eugene, as now Eugene can actually generate card advantage and start to actually do something with the retires that they are creating, besides just top searching X amount of cards and just calling everything to the field. I think this is much better than the Soul Dash 5 skill of Eugene, but at the same time you still have Soul Dash 5 skill of Eugene for those emergency situations where you have nothing left. So overall, Capture Festival, I think this is going to be an insane card for Eugene if you can combo it off correctly. So I'm very hopeful that this set is going to bring some more support for Eugene. But overall, this order card is pretty good. But Dragon Empire aside, we got some Dark Stage reveals. And we start off with the Grade 1, which is Diabolus Boy's Kyriel. And Kyriel or Cyriel has the effect on a rearguard circle. When this unit boosts a Grade 3 unit, your opponent cannot intercept until the end of the battle. Yeah, this kind of whatever doesn't really mean all too much right now, so I don't really see a lot of usage for this particular card. Especially since the Grade 1 lineup is already filled with very powerful cards. This doesn't really compete with that. But a Grade 1 that does compete with that is Diabolus Madonna Regina. And Regina has the effect, act on rearguard circle once a turn if you are in Final Rush, cost, counter +1, and put 2 other rearguards into your soul. Choose a card from your soul, call to the rearguard circle, and that unit and this unit gets power plus 10k until the end of turn. This effect is pretty insane, because yes, you're gonna lose 1 rearguard because you turn 2 rearguards into 1 rearguard, but you generate 20k power onto the board, which is actually pretty good in combination with the restand capabilities of the Final Rush tactic. And also, you can turn any 2 cards in an actual combo piece that's in your soul, while at the same time, you can just put 2 cards into the soul and get one of the 2 cards you just put into the soul back onto the field for just to put on the extra 10k power onto those units, which in a Final Rush strategy can actually be really good. Like if you have a Leonard on the field, you might as well want to empower the Leonard even further to make the on-hit skill even more threatening. So I think Regina is going to be a very good card for the Bruce build, and I can definitely see this going to be somewhat of a staple in the Grade 1 lineup. But on top of that, Bruce also got another new card, which is kind of ridiculous. And it's a new Grade 3 normal order in the likes of Pandemonium Tactics. And Pandemonium Tactics has the effect, play this with cost, counter +1, soul charge 4, if you are in Final Rush, perform all of the effects below according to the number of cards in your soul. 6 or more, draw a card. 8 or more, all of your front row units get power plus 10k until the end of turn. 12 or more, choose one of your Vanguards and it gets critical +1 until the end of turn. Now I can already tell you that the 12 or more is something that will almost never go off. I think it's very unlikely that that thing will hit, because it means you need to already have 8 soul during the main phase before you use this order card, because then you end up on 12. The 6 and 8 are much more likely, and I think the 8 is actually pretty doable in a lot of scenarios. And because that's the case, this effectively is the same thing as the previous Grade 3 normal order. I think it's something reckless rush or something, basically allowing you to give 10k power to the front row and it draws you a card, which also this card does. The only difference is that this order also gives you 4 soul. That's also pretty huge, because that means in a scenario where you only have 1 soul and you top deck this card, you can actually still do your Final Rush plays, where the other Grade 3 normal order does not allow you to do that. That order only gives you the extra 10k power, so you already need to be able to set up your soul tactics and also everything be ready on the board. This can also be a emergency button in a scenario where you don't have the cards you need to generate your plays. So overall, this is a very good order. I can definitely see this either be run alongside the other Grade 3 order, or potentially just replace it outright, depending on your playstyle and what you preference more. You can go either for one or the other, or maybe a combination of the two. Now, if we move over to Cater Sanctuary, we also got a new Grade 3 in the likes of Cloudy, Heavenly, Incenti, Bragard. And Bragard has the effect, auto, when this unit is placed on a rearguard circle, if your hand has 4 or less cards, cost, counter +1, look at the 5 cards on top of your deck, choose up to 1 Grade 3 unit from among them, call to the rearguard circle, and shuffle your deck. So this is basically another plus engine, and if your hand size is a little bit low, like, it's fine. I don't really think it's going to replace anything. It could be another option for certain players if they have a certain playstyle where your hand size is going to be low at all times, and then counter +1 for just a +1 for a search for Grade 3 in top 5. It's not bad, but it's also not anything bound breaking so far. So yeah, it's basically a new tool for Bastion in its entire Grade 3 arsenal. Now, we also got a new Grade 2 in the likes of Knight of Heavenly Bullet Procris. And Procris has the effect, act on rearguard circle, cost, put this unit into your soul, and rest another rearguard. Look the 3 cards on top of your deck, choose any number of Grade 3 cards from among them, reveal them, and put them into your hand and discard the rest. So this can be a very interesting plus engine for Bastion, because you run a lot of Grade 3s. But the problem that I have with this is that it is a Grade 2, so there's not really a lot of value you can generate out of it. Sure, if you can see this early game, you can put it into the soul and you can rest the card you get off the right lines, even if it's a trigger, you don't really mind in that scenario, and then potentially plus a couple of cards. But in general sense, it's kind of awkward because it also means you need to run a grade 2 in your deck, which then also makes your deck a little bit less consistent. So I'm not really completely sold about it. And I also don't really think it's going to be all too great in Hexorb Sorceress, but who knows? Maybe it actually might be good there. It all depends on how this card is going to play out in the new support wave as well. Now beyond that, we also got a new grade 3 order, but it's not a normal order. It's surprisingly a set order. So this means we now have 3 nations that have access to a set order, because we have Brandgate with all the set order right lines. We got Lyrical Monasterio with the set order from the starter deck, as well as the set orders for the lower Roll build, but now we also got the set order for Cater Sanctuary in the likes of Protector, Pride. And this thing, in my honest opinion, is kind of ridiculous, because it just, in my eyes, power creeps Darkstrain Dragon. Because its effect is, play this with cost, discard a card from your hand, continuous order zone, all of your grade 3 rearguards get boost. Yeah, so where Darkstrain Dragon needs to Soulless 2 every single turn to even give you units boost, this thing just, if it's there, all your grade 3s have boost regardless of the scenario. It costs you 2 cards, but a lot of cards in Bastion don't really mean anything. All your grade 3s are just bodies on the board, they have no shield value, so if you can get more value out of them, might as well just discard them for just discard. And honestly, this is actually really good in my eyes. And honestly, surprisingly enough, we have the grade 3 triple art from the last set, from the Brush of the Legends, which was honestly a joke. The one that you need the Persona Ride to give it boost, and if it boosted, you can, and unit in front of it stands, he also stands. But now with this order card, suddenly that card becomes kind of ridiculous, and it makes sense, because if you look at the artwork, he's standing there with his back facing towards us. So yeah, Protector Pride, I think this is going to be the next staple for Bastion. This thing is kind of ridiculous, and makes Bastion even more threatening playstyle with just more consistent big beaters all around, which is a scary thought. Now beyond that, we also got Stoicheia cards, and for Stoicheia we mainly got new Zorga support in the likes of this grade 1 Desiring Wild Crow, and it has the ability, act on Rearguard Circle once a turn. If you played an order this turn, discard an order card from your hand and draw a card. So this is a nice card to basically turn your order cards into actual card value, because most order cards in your hand probably are cluttering your hand if you have too many, so you might as well want to trade them in for just more card advantage. But depending on the deck you play, this might not actually matter all too much. Like, it looks to be very much like a Zorga support card with how the artwork is portrayed and the ship behind it, but a lot of the times Zorga players have an issue with a lack of order cards in their hand, so this might not always be good. But at the same time, I've also seen Zorga players having the issue where they have too many orders in hand, and then suddenly this might actually be good. So depending on which side of the spectrum you fall into, this card might actually be good for you. Now another card that's surprisingly very good for Zorga is this new grade 3 Pulverizing Fault. And Pulverizing Fault has the effect continuous rearguard circle. This unit gets power plus 5k for each order card in your bind zone. Activate on your opponent's turn too. This is an insane card, because at probably all times during the game, it's going to be a 15k beater, which makes it on par on your grade 2s. And it's also going to be a 15k during your opponent's turn, which means it's much harder to remove. But the next turn, once you Alchemagic for the second time, it's going to be a 20k beater. And that will then start to add up, and add up, and then up, and then add up, and it becomes only stronger and stronger and stronger the longer the game progresses. And interesting enough, you can use this in combination with the grade 2 Grave Shooter or something that can recall himself from the drop zone for a soulless and binding one of your orders. That then helps you to accelerate your order count in your bind zone, which then can make this thing start to hit like a truck out of nowhere, and that then every single turn over and over again can give Zorga access to even bigger beaters than they already have access to. So depending on your build and your playstyle, Pulverizing Fault can be a very deadly beater slash finisher to your game plan. Now there's also another card that we got access to, which is kind of like a mini Zorga-ish, but it's not going to be Zorga support, because we got this grade 3 Decay Hollow Dragon. Probably the new generation of Skull Dragon, as he has the effect, although when this unit is placed on the Vanguard circle, choose a normal order from your drop and you may play it without paying its cost. this play counts for the number of plays too. So what I believe what they are referring to with this effect is that either it triggers other cards that say when an order card is being played, or that it maybe also counts towards how much orders you may play during a turn, because you can only play one normal order per turn. So I'm not sure if they are referring to the fact that if you use this effect you cannot play a normal order from hand, or they mainly are referring to that that maybe some cards have an activated ability that says every time an order is played they do something. I think it might be more like this, because this feels like some type of superior order activation that we've seen with the Brandgate right line, that they use all those set orders that you can just forcefully activate them. I think that's the case, but I could be wrong here. Overall, this is actually a really interesting card in the fact that it's another way to use your orders. And in the scenario where you're stuck on Zorga, for example, and you don't have the Counterblast, you don't have the Soul Blast to even use your orders, and you're stuck sitting there, this can be actually a way out, where you just write and you get an order effect, which can be an extra bit of power onto the board, a new field, or whatever. It's an interesting card that might or might not be something, and otherwise, it's once again one of those cheap cards or those low rarity cards that can become the center focal point of the budget strategy. So overall, pretty interesting card. Now finally, we've also got some new Brandgate reveals, and this new support wave is going to support the brand new right line where we're going to play with meteors. And first off, we got a new grade 1 in the likes of Gravidia Orgueil or Orgueil. And Orgueil has the effect, on a rearguard circle, once unit attacks or boost, if your order zone has 3 or more meteorites, cost Soul Blast 2, countercharge 1, and this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of turn. So overall the value is there, like turning 2 Soul Blast into a countercharge and then giving a little bit power is actually pretty decent, especially since those meteorites can generate the soul that you're going to need. Now overall the deck doesn't really use a lot of counterblast, as the main usage just is 1 counterblast per turn from your main grade 3, but you can add in more cards that actually are using counterblast. But what I think where this card really shines is in a different strategy of this particular right line, where instead you're going to be very aggressive, you're going to be very conservative of your meteorites and your retire effects, and you're going to turn it more into a stall strategy. So maybe every single turn you're just going to pop 1, 2, or maybe 3 meteorites, and you're going to keep it at that. So you just are going to control your opponent's board with these effects while also pressuring them a little bit. But in order to do that, you need the resources to sustain this. And this is actually a pretty good card that can allow you to do that. Now, of course, this all comes down to if you might see something like turning meteorites from your drop zone back into the set order zone, or maybe being able to put cards from your drop zone or somewhere else back into your deck, so you can maybe fluff your deck a little bit so you can survive into the late game without potentially going deck out. So it all comes down to that. Overall, very interesting card that might open up a future game plan option. Now we also got a grade 2, which is also pretty interesting, as we've got Gravidia Stunnel, and she has the effect continues a rearguard circle and guardian circle. If your drop and order zone have a total of 5 or more set orders, this unit gets power plus 5k and shield plus 5k. Activate on opponent's turn too. So it's a 15k beater, 10k interceptor, or 10k shield in hand. Overall, pretty good. If you want to play something generically good like this, you have the room for it. Overall, the condition is pretty easy to fulfill. So if you need the numbers, here are the numbers. And finally, we've got a new grade 3 with some pretty solid on hit pressure, as we got Gravidia Pribram, and Pribram has the effect auto rearguard circle. When this unit attack hits, search your deck for up to 1 meteorite card, put it into your order zone, and shuffle your deck. So this is a nice way to filter your deck even more, while also lowering the chance of accidentally drawing into those meteorites, because you don't want to clutter your hand too much with meteorites, as you can only use so many per turn, and at some point you just are going to have a lot of hand that doesn't really do anything. So the more and faster you can filter them out of your deck, the better it is for you. And overall, the hit pressure is nice, especially seeing as your opponent is most likely going to guard your Vanguard at all times. So having then a rearguard that also comes with hit pressure, that makes it even harder or tougher for your opponent to keep guarding every single attack, because they probably need to let something through, and might as well let this card through. Like, it's not an amazing on hit effect, for at least for your opponent's point of view, because it just filters your deck for meteorite into the order zone, which can give you a soul, but how much value is going to be? It's just that there's a lot of extra hidden value behind that, because not only will it give us potentially an extra retire, another condition fulfillment for our main grade 3 boss unit, as well as a filter for our deck, which then can increase the quality of our draws, as well as increase the quality of our drive checks. So overall, a pretty solid card, and might actually see some play depending on how we're gonna build the deck and how much room we have left. And that also concludes all the cards that we got today. So as I already explained, The order support this week was kind of crazy because Stoicheia as well as Brandgate got actually some legit support that can change things up in their current card pool. But more importantly, the order cards they introduced for Dragon Empire, Dark States, and Cater Sanctuary is kind of ridiculous. And it's weird to say that the Dark States one, which people are having the most buzz around, is in my eyes, in my honest opinion, probably the weakest among the three. I think the Cater Sanctuary order card as well as the Eugene order card are way more effective than the Pandemonium Tactics. Because Pandemonium Tactics is basically a different version of an order card they already got. You have the Force Soul on top of it, which can definitely make a change and a difference, but at the same time can also backfire you if you're in a late game scenario. You have only, what, 6 cards left on deck. There's no way in hell you're going to use that order card because you cannot attack with your Vanguard or you're going to deck out. So there's upside and downsides, but in case of Cater Sanctuary and Dragon Empire, there are only upsides. There's literally only upsides to playing those cards. You're actively increasing the power potential and threshold of your deck, and you raise the ceiling or the floor, whatever you want to call it, without changing anything all too big in the current strategy or card pool. So overall, pretty good reveals, but I'm very curious what you guys think in the comments down below. So let me know all your thoughts about these cards. Are you excited about some of these? Are you happy with the new support that's given to your favorite nation? Let me know all in the comments down below. As always, this video has been brought to you by our lovely patrons over at patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a Patreon today. But with that said, I've been Mr. Time Leap. I'll see you guys in the next one!